Welcome. How's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Paul, where are you based? I didn't hear that from you.
I'm in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay. So Santa's his production facility is actually in Nebraska. I didn't know that. I thought it was in a different location.
Well, it's a good way to keep the cover, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
fool them all. Think them further north. Don't
So
like the snow.
Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why I mentioned Santa and
Okay, sure. So my name is Paul Pape, but I'm also canonically, I guess, known as Santa for Nerds. And for the last 20 years, I've been a designer and fabricator of custom collectibles
okay.
for people all over the world, as well as companies like Disney, Universal, Nickelodeon, those kind of places. And so I spent the last 20 years as a full-time artist, designing and building whatever people threw at me. And so that's why they gave me the name Santa, because if you want it, I can actually make it happen. And so in doing that, I actually started coaching and consulting other artists and creatives on how to become better business people,
Mm,
because business kind of just goes over our head. It's too logical. We don't care.
yeah,
It's like we're
yeah.
big nebulous clouds of thoughts. We're not linear thinkers at all. And so what I found was that a lot of times, a lot of the standard business uh, terms and all of that fun stuff just kind of goes over their heads, or they just don't kind of grasp it. And so what it is, I actually created this business here called Gamify Business, where
Mm,
I am the barkeep slash game master. And what I do is I teach entrepreneurship through an RPG or role playing game envelope. And so everything that we would do in
huh.
business, we actually do it through like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. But instead of rolling dice and making up fictitious numbers, we actually use like a sliding scale to actually figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. So when you go to look for party, you can actually find people to help supplement that.
That's amazing. And if that doesn't work out, you got a set design, in your future because that set behind you is beautiful. For those who can't see,
Thank you.
he's got a sword, he's got a mantle, he's got the drinks, which clearly you designed in some way, shape, or form. It's
Yep.
fantastic, man. I don't know why I expected anything less, but um,
Well, Santa,
yeah.
I show you the rest of my work. I have this thing called Nerd Wall, which is like 21 feet of just the nerdiest stuff. It's the 20 years of my work that I've been doing sitting over on this wall here. And so normally I'm trying to get the Gamify Business thing going. So I'll use this set, but the other one is the one that when people come to my studio, I'm like, write down your questions, because when you see the wall, you'll forget everything that you did. They're like,
Uh,
nah, it's not true. I'm like, no, for real, for real. And so it's like any nerd's paradise down here. You can spend hours doing I Spy and whatever nerddom you like. It's up there somewhere. So,
so talk to me how you got started in art. Was that an original thing for you as a kid? Did that develop? How did you become an artist?
really roundabout, I guess you could say. I'm a nerd, always have been, and that's something I wear as a badge of honor. And when I was younger, I used to love to make things with my hands, but I made a lot of gifts. That was a big thing for me. I love to surprise people with stuff. And
Okay.
then when I got into high school, I discovered theater, and I was going to be an actor. I was going to be the best actor that you've ever seen. And then I got to college and learned that I'd never act again, because while I'm great on stage, I'm horrible about memorizing lines.
Uh,
So, not great to be on stage with, but I can command a stage. So if it's just me, I do really good. But then, so I was told by the head of the acting department there that she'll never cast me in any show ever again and go change my major. And I'm stubborn. So I was like, nah, it's not going to happen. And then I met the dean of the department. He came down and he said, well, how about I teach you everything? And I'm
okay.
like, oh, I'll take everything. And so he taught me every aspect of theater, from management to design to whatever. And then from there, I fell into design. I love design work. And so I became a scenic designer and props designer, which kind of led to where I'm at right now. So I went to
Yeah.
grad school for that, won some really big awards for it. And then in my last year of graduate school, I was assisting a guy who had, I think at the time it was 6 shows on Broadway. I'd actually gone out to New York. I was assisting him on that. And I was like, hey, John, this is the best. As a designer, that's like the apex in America. Like
Hmm.
Broadway is where you want to be. And I said, so how is it? And he goes, it's horrible. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because there's no money. America does not pay for art. We just don't
Mm,
like it. And so he's like, I'm hustling. He says, I have an apartment in New York. I probably spend 48 weeks out of the year on the road.
brutal.
He says, I
Tough.
pay. He says, if you want a life, if you want an actual life, find something else. And that was like right after I graduated, I got my degree, and I'm like, okay, now what?
Just
And
feel like I
so my
needed to
wife
do
and
I
I
needed to do this meeting like 6 years ago, dude.
tried. So then so what happened is I was working on a show, and I was designing some like miniature furniture for it as a show called I Am My Own Wife. And at the time it was just like a theater workshop type show.
Okay.
And I'm an overachiever, obviously. And so, so what happened was in the script it calls for this guy to pull out some furniture from a museum from like a bag. And I was like, well, wouldn't you rather have like a box and then actual like tiny miniature versions of this furniture? And he's like, well, yeah, but I don't know anybody can do that. I'm like, oh, I can do that. So I made it for him, and we did this show, and we had a shoestring budget. But I'm from Nebraska, but I was in LA, and I was like, oh wait, I can take that miniature, that small amount of money, what they considered peanuts, which was $5,000, and I could do a lot with that, because in my undergrad, $5,000 was our top tier shows.
Right.
And so I blew it out of the water. I just did the whole set design, whatever. It was gorgeous. And then that show went on to win Pulitzer prizes, and my stuff ended up on Broadway itself. And I mean, it was weird. But while I was building that set, it's all about chairs, and so I had to hand cut out like hundreds of chairs, and I was
Jeez.
like, oh god. So I was like, all right, there's got to be a better way. So I actually invented this product called Pop Out Furniture, which was laser cut paper furniture that you could fold up really
I saw
easily.
that on your website. Yeah.
And that was before everybody had a laser in their basement, like it was way before any of that technology was out there. And that garnered me a bit of success. I probably made about $1 million on that one. And
Hey,
then it just kind
that
of,
that's pretty
yeah,
good for that's more than most people will make in their lifetime, let alone with paper furniture.
correct. But then I saw that crash, because then the personal laser came out and everybody was like, nah. And so I kind of pivoted, and I was a professor. I came back to Omaha. My wife's like, I'm tired of LA, hated it. She's a costume designer, and she just never broke into
I
that.
I
And
guess
so,
maybe this is a stupid question, but I would have thought that the natural next step for you would have been like movies and like set design in movies. I would have thought that's where the money is. That's I would have thought, hey, you get on like a Tarantino movie or
yeah.
something like that. I'd have to think there's money in that.
Would you like me to blow that myth out of the water for
Sure,
you?
let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, so I did. So I was in LA, and I am good. I'm very. I've got the awards to back it up. I'm a
Oh
good,
yeah,
talented
everything I've
person.
seen you do is amazing.
And so what happened is I went out there, and you meet a bunch of directors and producers that are working in the industry. And I met a guy really good. He would take me along for all these things. I was assisting other designers and that kind of stuff. And he's like, man, you are one of the most talented guys I know. I'm like, awesome. I said, I'd love for you to kind of hook me up, because what I learned is in LA, designers don't, they just don't go walking into rooms and say, hey, I want to be a designer here. They have to be brought along usually by a director or a producer. And
Go
so I
makes
asked my
sense.
director producer friend, and I said, hey, so I'm good, I'm talented. Let me get on your next show. And he said, I would love to do that, but I also know 8 other people who have known longer than you, and you got to wait until they become famous before I can even get to you. It takes about 10 years. And so
You
you
had to wait
struggle
until they become famous. I
till
don't
the other designers move on far enough that enough designers or directors and producers are pulling them into the industry. And so you're basically just on a big wait list, and you're constantly working. I mean, you're trying to do everything you can, but you got to have like a side, not even a side hustle. You have to have a hustle. And
mm,
then you have this thing that you're doing on the side. And so you would do a lot of things for what they would call, your real, or you're doing it for professional credit. But it was just one of those industries that no matter your skill level, you're just not going to make it. Someone has to take you along. And
interesting.
so yeah. So that was fine, because what I did is I popped back here to Nebraska with my wife. She decided she wanted to do costume design full time in the regional theater scene. And like, okay, that's fine. I was doing pop out furniture. I was making good money. Didn't really care. And then I was like, I'm kind of bored sitting in my house. So my alma mater, my undergrad, was like, hey, would you like to come be a professor? I'm like, yeah, sure, I got some time. I'll do that. So I went over there. I was a professor. I didn't last long. I'm not made for that. But
Mm,
I had a student ask me, this is back in 2006 when the Nintendo Wii came out. I don't know if you remember that, but it came out, and he's like, hey, my gamer girlfriend and I would really like, for Valentine's Day, I'd like to give her a gift of our two Mii's sculpted so I could give it to her.
got
I'm
it.
like, yeah,
Yep.
sure, not a
Uh-huh.
problem, man. So I did that. This is 2006 again. This is before YouTube. This is before all the big blogs and Facebook and all that fun stuff was really big. Nothing was online. And my buddy took the image, the things that I gave him, took photos of them, and he uploaded them to a site called Super Punch, which is a nerd haven blog that's out there, and it took off.
Mm,
And I started getting so many requests for me's that I was like, oh, that's interesting. And the money started pouring in more than I was making for teaching, but teaching was taking all my time. And so I thought, well, so I asked my wife, I said, hey, can I quit the teaching thing and then go do art full time? And she said, I'll give you 1 year to make it work. And then about 3 months out of that, I made $50,000 and with an idea. And she's like, okay, you seem to know what the hell you're doing. And that was 20 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a long roundabout way of getting somewhere. But the whole point is that I found out that the best way to be successful as an artist is to bend, don't break. Like I noticed pop out furniture was kind of crapping out. And so I thought, well, what else is out there? So instead of trying to force it and keep that machine running when I knew it was slowly going away, it was best to kind of see what the next best thing was. And I just keep hopping around. And that's eventually what led me into like the sites at Disney and whatever, because I produce good work. I'm very fast, and I'm versatile. So I don't have a team of 50 people. I've got me.
Mm.
And I do every aspect of the design from, ideation all the way through completion. But,
Mm.
20 years later, kind of wearing on you.
So I got a couple of questions. I mean, one, how did the money from pop out furniture work? Like and maybe can you just explain that to people, like what? Because I've seen the pictures now from your website, but I think if anyone's listening, they don't know what's going on. They don't even probably have an impression of what that is.
So pop out furniture is quarter inch. So when you're working in design, especially theatrical or like movie design, everything you have to build is in scale, which means that it's a miniaturized but measurable version of something. Because obviously, when you're ideating or when you're coming up with the designs, you don't want to build everything full scale because it's too expensive. So you build what's called scale models. And so what pop out furniture was a lot of they call it paper engineering, but like pop out books, it's that, but on a flat scale. So I figured out how to create all of the furniture from. I ended up with like 9 different time periods, and then each page came with 10 different kinds of furniture and some people in costumes for it. And then you can color them while they're flat. Then you cut them out, fold them, and then you've got 3-dimensional furniture that's actually to scale, which then makes your set designs for whatever you're doing that much more impressive. So that's what happened there. And then how I came into any of the money was that I started doing a lot of trade shows with it, and the theatrical, like there's like 3 major brands in the theatrical media area. And so they decided that they wanted to partner with me. And so they bought the rights to the pop out furniture with some caveats and all that fun stuff that go with
Mhm.
it, because that's how contracts work.
Yep.
And so basically, I got picked up by the 3 major brands that run the theater world. And so we kind of rode that wave for about 5-7 years before it started to kind of crash on us.
That was kind of like almost a royalty agreement, if you will, on your IP
Yeah.
for that.
Yep. Pretty much.
Mm. And the big thing that you're accomplishing with those pop out pieces of furniture is just like almost like a blueprint, like a physical blueprint of the set before somebody like you comes in and they're like, "Hey, build us a table, build us a chair." And then you build this
Correct.
table and they're like, "Oh, it's too big. We need
Right.
to
It
build a
allows you to
smaller table."
see. Well, see, a lot of directors, especially directors, they're not visual people. They can see it if it's like real life. I worked with a director who I had to build him a half-inch scale version of things. So every half an inch is 1 foot in real life, and so I had to build the
Okay.
theater, but I built the entire theater underneath the stage, the fly system, the backstage, all the tracks, and we actually had to build every piece functional. So we had like working fly lines, so everything kind of got brought in and all that
What?
whole nine. I mean, it was 4 foot tall. We had to drive this thing around on a golf cart. It was crazy because he didn't quite understand the spatial relationships on just a flat piece of paper or on a rendering, which is the other thing, like a very beautiful rendered image, which I'm sure we've all seen pictures of like Star Wars and whatever of the sets and stuff that are there. But the thing is, you can't really see the depth. You can't really see how people are going to interact with it. So we build models so that you can either give them to the shop and say this is exactly what it's going to look like, and they can measure off of that and then use it as a reference with the drawings, or you can give it to the director to play almost dollhouse with, where they can take all little miniature versions of the actors and kind of move them around, which is what that one director used to do.
Am I dumb to think that this feels like something a computer program would do? I mean,
They can do
nowadays.
3D renderings. Yeah, 3D renderings are a big part of it these days, and it actually makes the process a lot faster. But again, we're talking about people who aren't necessarily technologically savvy.
Yeah.
And so even if we're zooming them through a 3-dimensional set, we can turn around, we can look at every aspect of it. They're still looking at a flat screen and they're like, I don't get it.
Mr. Davis goes, I just want to see it in front of me. Can somebody build it
Correct.
for me?
I want
And
to
you go,
hold it in my hands.
yeah.
That's
You're
exactly
like,
what
all
it
right,
is.
well, it's going to cost you, $2,500 for me to build this thing, but sure, if that's what you want.
They keep going up on that one, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's what like if you look at architectural models for building a building, like an actual architectural model, they can range anywhere from $60,000 to $200,000.
Jeez. Hmm. Interesting. Okay, so I guess the big question is then you've done this thing and it actually did work. I mean, and most people in their career will never like hit a win like you just hit. But it sounds like you sort of saw the writing was on the wall for this. How did you mentally decide that hey, this thing is not going to keep on going and I can't keep reinvesting in this thing time after time? Because I think a lot of people will tie that up and make that their identity. I'm the guy who invented this thing, and then it's like, well,
Correct.
if you might be the guy who wrote it into the ground too, if it doesn't end up sticking around. So how did you end up like deciding that a transition was necessary?
I had a great mentor who used to use this term maximum effort, minimum effect.
Okay.
Okay. We use it a lot in theater. You know, you can spend hours and hours and hours working on the minutia of something to then not ever have it being seen. So put your time where it needs to be. And it's an efficiency thing. And what I saw was that while I was selling in volume to these places that were moving it, these catalog companies, they weren't moving it. And they weren't putting ad
Oh,
dollars behind it. They would put it in their catalog like they did everything else they had. And they're like, hey, you've got my catalog. But I'm like, yeah, your catalog's 400 pages thick.
yeah.
And so to find this one thing, and the other thing is it was a new product. I invented something. So if you don't know it exists, you don't know it exists.
Yeah.
And so you're not looking for it. And so what I saw happening was that their orders were slowing down because my stuff didn't deteriorate. It lasts forever. I still got boxes of it sitting in the back room there. And so what would happen is they bought all this stock and then they just sat on it. And so their reorders got smaller and smaller.
I
And
see.
then I noticed I wasn't, when I go to trade shows, they're like, what new thing do you have? And I came out with new products every single year for 5 years. But then I kept seeing that people would only buy the new thing. They wouldn't buy the older thing.
Mm.
And I was like, "Okay, I'm watching trends, which is what you got to do in business. You know, you got to watch." And while I was riding the high of selling a lot, I was watching it slowly just diminish over time. And I was like, okay, well, I could ride this into the ground. Unfortunately, I've seen family members do exactly the same thing. And I'm like, you know, I'm one of those people. I don't get attached to anything like really bad. And it sounds horrible as a human being, but like my
No,
attachment
no,
level.
that is an important skill for a business person. I mean, if you ever talk to any of like the best stock traders in the world, it's just like ruthless lack of attachment to any of the decisions that they make. Okay, I made this
Mhm.
decision. Okay, it looks wrong. We're going to take it off the board. And that's the primary thing that they preach is like you have a plan and you just read the plan and it's like sell this when it hits a 50% gain. You're not like, but I could make 100. You're like, no, just sell it. Get out.
You got it, and you got to. And the thing is you might lose, and that's the thing that always keeps people up at night. It's like, well, what if I? And it's like, look at your trends, look at your patterns. That math does not lie. There will never be another boon of people wanting paper furniture because now I've got 11 3D printers in my back room that can do better full color versions of the things I was selling as flat paper
Mm.
and eliminate 90% of the work. So I'm like, well, if I was still doing pop out furniture, what would have happened is I would have gone into the 3D printed
Yeah,
furniture
you'd have maybe
version of
sold
it.
like templates and stuff to people, which still
Yeah,
could also be good.
you could, but I found that more and more schools, which is my primary market when I was doing this, have stopped teaching 3D model building. They've gone to 3D renderings. So
Mm.
they go the computer route, which is a lost art because I'm sorry if you ever been to Chicago and you've been to the room with all the miniatures in it in the basement. I mean it's awe-inspiring how much detail we used to put into things like doll houses and such. And now if it's not mass produced, we don't care.
Yeah.
And so we think it's like a child's thing. But there used to be a huge, like it used to be an artisan thing to be able to produce beautiful work at scale.
Hmm.
But it's just kind of becoming a lost art. And so it was just one of those things that you have to have enough foresight to be like, okay, I see the writing on the wall and I'm okay with that. And then let's move on to the next thing.
Mm. Okay, so you find this Wii figurine kind of thing, and that goes a little bit viral.
Yep.
Was that the first product that you said like I can produce these for people?
It's the first, like almost after pop out furniture was the first thing that I was like almost mass produced that I could have made. The niche that I found, and they say the riches are in the niches, right?
Mhm.
And so the niche that I found was in the customization. So the Nintendo Wii allowed you by using their format to create any character that looked like anything. And so you could really customize your look to have you as that figure. And that job right there taught me so many lessons. I've got my first cease and desist from Nintendo of America,
Oh
which is
boy.
really nice.
Yep.
I got to talk to some pirate lawyers. They were really fun.
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
uh, what I learned was that I decided that instead of being blind or kind of ignorant to the laws, I decided, no, I'm going to double down. I'm going to learn them all. And so when I got that first call, I'm like, all right, I'm going to look into this because I'm a nerd. And so I really dug down into the copyright law and learned the difference between copyright and trademark. And I learned that there's a gray area within copyright that almost every artist walks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even a fine line. It's a 4-lane highway is what it
Yeah.
is. And US law allows that to happen. If we didn't have it, and listeners right now are screaming, that you're thieving, you're stealing, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is we wouldn't have most of our commercial holidays if it wasn't for that gray zone. Like every Halloween costume that you see out there is stolen.
Right. Right.
As far as art goes, all of the imagery that we have of Santa Claus is stolen from Coca-Cola. Like before Coca-Cola in the 1950s came out with that jovial fat Santa, it was actually a skinny dude in a green cloak. Had nothing to do with that Coca-Cola look, but now that's what we see as the iconic Santa Claus. It's
Mm-hmm.
stolen IP. And so what I found was that working with Nintendo specifically was that they had to copyright every variation possible, which
Oh.
was somewhere in the millions, to be able to say you can't produce this object.
Mm.
Now, what I couldn't use was their trademark. So I couldn't call it a me. I couldn't say it was a Nintendo me or from the Nintendo Wii, because that is their trademark. And trademarks you have to like really aggressively pursue, otherwise you'll lose it.
Yeah.
Whereas copyright, it's gray. So you don't have to. If you don't pursue it, you don't necessarily lose it, but you can lose face. And so companies like Mickey Mouse, or like Disney, they're like, no, we're going to like really pursue the use of Mickey Mouse's IP because we don't want people doing horrible things with it. But if you remember back in the 90s, early 2000s, the Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes peeing on everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy who created that, he's like, I can't litigate enough to stop that. But he was obviously not for it, but there was just nothing he could do because he would have to litigate in every single state
Yeah.
to be able to do it. So
Yeah. And it's like, well,
it's the battle.
what damages am I even seeking?
Correct. You're just getting one guy to stop. Okay, so Bill stops it. Well, Bill's buddy Steve, who was still running, he owns the business now. So now I got to stop Steve, and it just never ends. And so you've got to understand your limitations there. The best analogy I love to use is I used to do a lot of trade shows like Comic-Cons
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a nerd and I make nerdy things. And I've seen this happen. There was 2 booths next to each other. One was a guy who worked for Marvel who drew Spider-Man.
Got it.
And that guy was selling original art, his name on it, the whole 9 yards. And his art goes for $900 to $2,000. If you wanted to personalize one sitting at his table, you're paying $800-900 for that. Right next to him was just an artist, me.
Yeah.
A random dude who's drawing Spider-Man. Looks like Spider-Man, looks exactly like that other guy's stuff. Now that guy could have said, hey, it's copyright infringement, dude. You can't be selling, especially right next to me. But that artist was selling his prints for $10.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is from that main artist, the guy who's working for Marvel, he's like, well, do I shut that guy down? Well, then you've got a little kid who's walking by and he loves Spider-Man. My littlest loves Spider-Man. And so he's like, I'd love to have a Spider-Man drawing. Well, I'm not going to give my little kid a $900 Spider-Man drawing.
Yeah.
I'm going to give him a $10 one. And so the goal here with the copyright is that, well, maybe, I don't shut that guy down, but he helps me build my fan base. And if I treat them with respect, eventually that kid's going to grow up, love Spider-Man enough that he'll buy that $900 print.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the idea that you have to kind of chase with this whole copyright thing.
Yeah, I can definitely see how if you were the artist, that would be frustrating, though. If you're like, you create this thing and then other people can profit off of it. And I guess that's the thing that becomes unfortunate when other people do little to no work, or maybe just they are profiting off of like the Calvin and Hobbes thing. Like if you take, Calvin and then draw him doing something different, that wasn't really difficult to do the drawing or even do it like with a digital thing. And then, you start selling t-shirts and maybe it's funny and people buy, lots of them. I get it how that would be frustrating, but
Absolutely. And that's the argument that we're actually having with AI right now. Is that AI, we all back before AI was around, we uploaded all of our stuff to Instagram, to ArtStation, to all of these places so that people could find out who we are, because most artists die in obsolescence. That's the word. So they die without anybody knowing who the heck they are.
Mhm.
And then they become famous after their work is out there. Well, obviously artists, they want to pay their bills and eat. And so they put all their information out online, which I think is actually beautiful because it's a huge world made small with the internet. And so you can find your fan base really easily. But then what happened is all that information's on the internet. Internet is forever. AI comes along and starts scrubbing the internet for all imagery. So now it's learned off of all of your work. So if I said, hey, I'd like a Paul Pape original style
Right.
drawing
Yeah.
of whatever, boom, it's gone. And so there's a lot of artists and creatives who are up in arms about this, because they're like, oh, they're going to steal my work. And you've got to be of either one of you're on one or two sides of this fence. You're on either the side that they're actually stealing it, or the other side, which is where I'm at, which is they were never your customers. They would never be your customers. They wouldn't have paid you even if they had no other option. They would have found something else to steal. And the proof of that is just driving around town and seeing any plumber with a Superman on the side of his van driving around, and it's got his, instead of the S, it's got P for plumber or whatever on it, but it is a blatant theft of IP.
Hmm.
That person would never have hired DC to draw them a Superman in the style of the bit. It wasn't going to happen. So the thing is you want to be known enough to put your information out there, but then you don't want any of the repercussions of doing it. If you don't want your art stolen, you can't display it. It's just the way it goes. And I think what it is I personally like AI. I think it's a wonderful tool, but so is this hammer. And I can do good things with it, or I can do bad things with
Yeah.
it, and it really just depends on how you do it. And again, that's walking that 4-lane highway of gray. So
Yeah. And I guess maybe this is a naive way of thinking about it, but I kind of envision at some point so much art is produced by AI. There's sort of like a renaissance of art designed by humans that you're like, this is not designed by AI. And that's cool
yeah.
for me that like a person had to draw this. And I think for someone like you, I think part of the beauty in what you do is that it's so intricate that you have to like mentally think like, well, what all had to happen to build this thing? And you have like I saw a lot of the ring boxes. It's like a Lord of the Rings trilogy book set that folds open and has like a little medieval scene inside of it with a ring. It's like, how in the world did he even begin to do this? And I think that's the cool part, is that there's a process, there's a human that was involved, not just like you snap a finger and then AI spits something out.
Well, there's two things about that. One, AI is soulless. It is a machine. It is a machine that has infinite knowledge, but it doesn't have any creativity.
Mm.
None. And no matter how good of a prompt you write, the creativity will never be there. And so what happens is it can create the most beautiful imagery, even three-dimensional objects, but they're soulless. It's the
Three
same thing with 3D printers.
3D,
They
can AI do 3D stuff?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How, like through a printer?
It designs the 3D objects and then you send it off to a printer. Yep. You
Uh,
can go in and say, I would like an action figure of myself. Here's a photo of me, but I want it in the style of the Peanuts. And it will automatically generate that for 3D printing. And then you just hit go. But the
okay.
problem is it's missing something. And it takes a lot of people a long time to understand why things that are generated on a computer are aren't quite there. And the answer is that there's no flaws.
Right.
AI computers make it perfect. If you People are not symmetrical. We're my this eye is lower than this eye, and when you're sculpting or when you're building something by hand, those errors show up. Even if you're a machinist and you're using a machine, it will never be perfect. It's going to have flaws, but those flaws are what we see, and that's what becomes more endearing. That's what gives a soul to it. So that's the biggest issue that we have with AI. Humans, and I agree with you, we're going to have this renaissance because humans put the soul back into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this upheaval, which we're having right now, of everyone saying, oh, they're stealing our work, they're stealing our work, they're stealing our work. But then you're going to have those outliers who are like, I'm going to utilize every bit of this and make it my own. And those artists are going to elevate the platform, and everyone's going to be scrambling to keep up with them. And that's really what I use it for, is to kind of help put the flaws of humanity back into the work.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that people kind of know that intuitively about music too. They're like, ah, they don't make music like they used to anymore. And I think I was watching a documentary about Tom Petty, and they were trying to record Refugee, I think. And they're like, we recorded it like 60 times. And we recorded it in different cities because we just wanted like a different vibe. So we recorded it in New York, and then we recorded it in this city. And he kind of jokes like everyone was doing like tracking by that point. You just have the bass player just play their portion alone and be like, I did it perfect, move on. But now it's you don't even have that portion. You just have like
Mhm.
AI goes in and makes the beat for somebody, or just someone at a
Yeah.
computer makes it. And I think that you miss a lot of that soul because it's not like,
Mhm.
wow, I really felt it the way that guy played it.
That's why we love live music,
Yeah.
for instance, as opposed to listen to the album. I can listen to an album and it's perfect, but you go see it live and you see the nuance. You're like, oh, I didn't catch that word before, but he choked on it in this one. So I really got it this time. Or you see like, yeah, the soul of the music put back in there because it's not perfect. And it doesn't need to be studio quality. It's, you want that raw edge to it that we're looking for.
Yeah, my brother's like one of the biggest Bob Dylan fans in the world. I've been to 2 Bob Dylan shows with him. And you talk about like theft, Bob Dylan would call it part of the folk tradition. He would basically just like steal people's songs.
Yep.
But that was a thing in folk music is like, oh, I really like Paul's art. So I'm going to do it in my way. Where now we
Yep.
think that's like so strange that like you would just
Uh,
take someone else's song and re-record it. Um, but one of the things that's cool about him is when you go to his live shows, he will change words around and he'll just like sing a song in a totally different way with like a different melody and a beat. And I went to the concert and people hated it. They were like, I want to hear the old classics. I want to hear them the way
right.
that I know them, which, for me too, I was like, I kind of want to hear Like a Rolling Stone, but he didn't play it. He didn't play any of the songs that and he didn't play them in the keys and tones that you like. But at the same time, if you like go on, you might be able to listen to a recording of a song that's only been done one out of one ways. And the words are
Yeah.
like moved around and he changes them. So, I mean, it is kind of cool.
There's something to it for sure.
Talk to me about so what happened with Nintendo? Were they polite enough to let you buy or were they pretty rough?
They're pretty rough.
All right.
Um, no, it was fine though because what I did is I love a challenge. I
Yep.
do love a challenge, and so what happens? They came in and their lawyers can't tell you what you can do. That's obviously they're being paid by Nintendo to tell you just to knock it off.
Yeah, right.
And
Quick
so
question, was
what
this
I did?
before you created like numerous of these for other people and like had some profit, or this is just
No,
like
no, I
they saw 2 of these and they were like, we got to get this guy.
no. It was after two of their employees had them on their desk.
Ah,
And so they're like, "Where'd you get those?" And they're like, "Oh, this guy on the internet."
yeah.
So this guy in Nebraska. And so what happened is they called me up and they said, "Hey, we're going to shut you down because you can't use our IP." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And so then I did some digging into it and I found out that the IP is their name. And I will fully admit, back then I was naive. I did not know. I was using the word Nintendo and me and we and all of my advertising.
Yep.
And so I learned pretty quickly that, yeah, that they can 100% shut you down for. So then I'm a designer, I'm an artist, and so I started selling MJJs, but the J didn't have a little swoop at the bottom, and it
Yep.
just
Yep.
sat a little lower than the line.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, and then I bought that word because it didn't mean anything. And
Ah.
I'm like, and then a couple years later, I came out with chocolate me's for Valentine's Day, and that was that was my second viral thing that happened. And
You made
they again
chocolate?
came to so I made Mii's and so I made a Wii box, so it looked like the Nintendo Wii, but I changed all of it, kind of like they did Wacky Packs. I don't know if you remember Wacky Packs from the '70s or Garbage Pail Kids. So there's a parody law that allows you to change. You can have the look of it, but you got to change anything that might be IP or that would be trademark. So it wasn't the Nintendo; it was the 910 Joe or something like that. It's like it was just different enough that it was
Yeah.
mine. And then inside of it were two me's, and you could have two guys, two girls, milk chocolate, white chocolate, dark chocolate, and you could mix and match so that we got to customize it. And so it was two chocolates in a Wii shaped box. And on the top it said, "We belong together, you and me," but it was WJJ and MJJ. They just look like eyes.
I thought you were saying that you made a chocolate mold, and I was like, that's insane because we have a bunch of chocolate brands, and I know how difficult that is. That is not
Oh no, I
easy.
was making molds of it because we were making 6,000 of these
So
chocolates. So
you
I
were
was
you
in
were
my
pouring liquid chocolate into these molds.
Yes, I was.
You are a maniac.
It was the worst 3 weeks of my life.
So here's a fun fact that most people don't know. First and foremost, there's only a handful of chocolate makers in the United States. And
Mhm.
then when you say chocolate maker, well, what do you mean by that? Well, you have like the raw ingredients, like the cacao that's coming across mostly from the Ivory Coast. There's even fewer people who actually take that cacao and mold it with the sugar and the milk into liquid chocolate. So even really big chocolatiers that are producing, millions of items a year, they'll have a hot liquid chocolate truck pull up like a straight up cement mixer that
Yep.
has liquid chocolate in it, and they'll pump it into their factory, and then they'll have pipes that circulate all throughout the facility that are constantly kept hot to keep that liquid chocolate liquid. So I learned that dealing with our chocolate clients, which I thought was really interesting because you think, oh, he's a chocolate maker. You're like, no, no, no. He takes the chocolate and he puts it into shapes and molds and puts it around a caramel, but like he is not turning the cacao into chocolate. That's like a process only a couple of people in the United States do. Apparently, it's very labor intense.
It's extremely labor intense, which is why we don't, like, most companies don't even work with chocolate anymore. They work with milk chocolate, or the chocolate milks, the what basically what white chocolate is.
Yeah.
And so it's the solids that come out as oils basically that come out of it. So the actual cacao is so expensive and so labor intense, and it's keeping the, we can nerd out about chocolate all day, but it's like keeping the crystalline shape correct so that it doesn't bloom, and it actually keeps that crispness to it and all that. It's very difficult, and so that's why companies like Hershey's have gone almost completely away from actually, like, majority of their chocolate isn't chocolate anymore. Like, you go get a Baby Ruth, it's not chocolate; it's chocolate flavored, and they have to change the
Mm,
law. So if you look on the package, it's chocolatey or chocolate flavored. It's not real chocolate. It has
mhm.
to have a certain amount of actual cacao in it.
So were you melting chocolate and then pouring it? Is that what you were doing for your chocolate
So what I
mousse?
was doing is I was buying 50-pound bars
Yep,
of it.
yep.
And then we had the giant temperer is basically what it is. So we'd take those 50-pound blocks, break them up, throw them into the thing, and just constantly keep it going. And then we had 75 molds, and it was pour, move it. And then as it cools down, pop them out, come back, do it all over again. And it was over 6,000 bars of chocolate in 3 weeks, from, conception to getting them out the door. And it was crazy. So
Why do I feel like that's not even in the top 10 of the craziest things that you've done?
it's not, but I learned a lot of valuable lessons about dealing with food. That was the first and
Oh, yeah.
last food item. I won't do it again, because the people, and also Valentine's, don't mess with Valentine's Day, because,
Mhm.
man alive, I had, so what happened is that was the year that the East Coast got hit with one of the worst ice storms in recorded history. And it happened on February 13th.
Yep.
And so I had over 1,000 boxes shipped to New York City, and they got lost.
Oh, good old postal service for you.
Yeah. And so if you wanna experience the lowest of lows, have 1,000 angry New Yorkers call on your phone telling you how you destroyed their relationship because they didn't get a $10, $20 box of chocolates for Valentine's Day. It's rough. 4 years later, they came back to me. The
No
chocolate.
way.
Yeah. I
That
was just as shocked. The chocolate was still good. It hadn't bloomed, it hadn't gone bad because we had done the right thing, but, bagged it right and all that stuff, but it had gotten put into lost packages somewhere in a warehouse, and then 4 years later, I get a giant crate sitting outside my house. They're like, "Here's all your chocolate back."
that's nuts. So where do you go after, kind of this we thing? And why did that not just stick around as like a staple? Did the we just become a little bit less popular?
Well, I mean, just like every form does. That one stuck around for a while. I mean, I probably made me's. I mean, actually, I just made some me's not too long ago. It's just not as many, but I was making 20 a week, at the heyday of it. So 20 personalized figures. And so then what happened is I was like, okay, how can I make this more efficient? Because I was hand sculpting every single one of them,
Yeah,
and
I was
that
gonna
was,
ask, like, as an artist, I know the art is the primary thing, but you're talking about some pretty legit scale. So, like,
yeah.
how are you doing this? How are you pricing it? How are you thinking
Ooh,
about all that
poorly
stuff?
at first. Let me tell you, for the pricing was poor at first because I didn't know. As an artist, that's the as a designer, as a person in this for 20 years, that is the question I get asked the most. How do I figure out what to charge
Mhm.
for my art? And I've got it now down to a science. It's actually a math question, and I've got it down. But when I was starting out, I didn't know. So I had to learn through mistakes. So when I was first selling them, I was selling these 12-inch figures for $50,
Okay.
completely handmade. And so eventually what I did is I got out, and the bodies are all pretty much the same. They're either just fatter or skinnier, but they're all pretty much the same size. And so eventually I was like, okay, let's not do that. Let's mold and cast those. So the only thing I'm sculpting is a head, which has the most versatile, like variety, and it's the most personalized part of it.
What
And
are
I can
you
paint them
making
whatever.
these out of?
So originally I was sculpting it out of a polymer clay called Super Sculpey. And then the bodies were poured. Eventually, when I started molding those, I was making them out of a material called Smooth Cast 300 from Smooth On Company, which is a two-part resin. Is basically what it is, or plastic.
Okay.
So plastic resin. And so I was literally making them in my kitchen. So my wife was at work, being a costume designer. I was sitting at home at my kitchen table making 20 of these a week, 10, 20 a week. And I did that for probably 6 years. And then eventually somebody's like, hey, I would like one of these on my wedding cake. Can you make a wedding cake topper version of this? And I'm like, yeah, sure. They're like, but that's way too big. Can you make a smaller version? And I was like, sure, why not? So I did like a 4-inch version of it. And then that one became even more successful than the standalone giant
Yeah,
ones.
12,
And I've
12 's
probably,
pretty. 12 inches. That's a big figure.
that's a big one. But the little ones here, I was selling for $200 a piece.
Yeah.
So I went from $50 to $200. And I could whip those out pretty quickly. I mean, I haven't done it in a day.
Hmm.
And I didn't like to tell people that. I always tell them I slaved over it forever, because when you
Yeah.
said, it's $400 for a pair, they're like, this must take you forever. Oh yeah, it's totally forever. But
Yeah.
no, it was like, spend a day on it. And so once and I was posting everything online. I was posting on Facebook. I was posting anywhere that I could do, YouTube, anywhere. Like Pinterest has become like, I'm huge on Pinterest. I don't have a Pinterest account,
Huh.
but my stuff is there.
Interesting.
And so I started putting it out there. And then what I noticed was that other people were putting me on lists of like really cool wedding cake toppers. And then somebody came up and said, hey, Xbox just came out with their version of the Mii's. They're called avatars. Can you make my avatars from Xbox in a cake topper? I'm like, sure, let's do that. And then, oh, can you make this thing in? So I started doing like Sackboy and Sackgirl, and then World of Warcraft. I was playing a lot of World of Warcraft at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, let's start sculpting World of Warcraft figures out of this. And then I stumbled onto my third viral thing, which in the game World of Warcraft, you have all these like side jobs you can do. And one of them is mining, which you just go find some random rock and you start mining it. And they had this one called Corium, which was a pretty purple, kind of looked like bubblegum, and it's very rare when I started playing. It's from the Burning Crusade. And I was like, that'd be a really cool Christmas ornament. And then I'm like, oh, I love a play on words. So an ornament. I'm like, oh, okay. So a World of Warcraft ornament. So I had this like little purple thing with Swarovski crystals on it, and I was selling them for $20 a pop. And I sold thousands of them,
Mm.
just because parents of kids who play or sit on this game called World of Warcraft, I don't know what the hell it is. They're like, there was no merch for Warcraft out there. And so I put it out there, and it got picked up by television stations, radio stations, whatever. So parents were like, I don't know what to get my kid who loves this weird game. So I type in World of Warcraft Christmas gifts, and then here my ornaments popped up.
Mm.
And so I started selling thousands of these pieces. And I was like, all right, this is good. And then I got my second cease and desist.
So for that one, what were they connecting there? That did you call
So
it the
on the
same name or something similar?
well, I didn't call it. I literally called them, I called them ornaments on my website.
Yep.
But on the front of the ornament was a flat section because it was a Christmas ornament, and it had World of Warcraft and the logo on there.
I see.
I didn't advertise it, but the sticker was there, and so it was one of the advertising. So I had to go in, and so they're like, "You're stealing our IP," and I'm like, "You don't own rocks, dude." And they're like,
Yeah.
"It's not the thing. It's our trademark." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So what I'll do is I'll go online and I'll create my own version of this. I'm an artist. I'm good. So I went online and changed all of the imagery that I had to have a different label on it. You still got the one with their IP on it. They just I couldn't advertise it, and so then that was fine. And then
Mm.
eventually that led to my third viral or fourth viral thing. Yeah, which would have been the custom carbonites from Star Wars, because everybody just kept
Yep.
asking for random things. And so then somebody's like, hey, can you freeze me in carbonite like Han Solo? And I was like, yeah, sure, I could. Of course I could do that. And so I just started sculpting that. And that was a Christmas, right before Christmas. I think I started selling those in November. And again, hand sculpting. I had a little mold for the trays that I would pour that plastic into, but then I would sculpt out the rest of it. And I was sculpting probably about one every 30 minutes. And I was just pumping out gobs of these things. And it wasn't just their faces that were custom. It was whole bodies, poses, whatever you wanted. I've
Mm.
got pictures of me online with just stacks of them sitting in front of me, just this whole world of carbonites. And then they didn't send me a cease and desist. I got something better from them. So about 4 or 5 years into me making these, I got contacted by Disney, and they said, "Hey, we're opening up the first Star Wars world, and we've got this new attraction, which is to have yourself frozen in carbonite. What we'll do is we scan your head, and then we put you on Han Solo's body, and you can get this 3D printed version of yourself frozen in carbonite. But because we're doing a soft launch and we don't have enough of these manufactured to do publicity, can we use those shots I had as their publicity for opening weekend?" And so my work was all over, and I'm like, of course, because I'm stealing your IP. So take what you want.
Yeah.
So, but they don't own the word carbonite. They don't own the word frozen. I can't use Han Solo.
Right.
So I say intergalactic bounty hunter, you know,
Mhm.
we see those on Halloween costumes too. It's like bounty hunter from space. You're like, that's Han
Mhm.
Solo. I know what
Yeah.
that is. And so I was doing that. And so they were okay with me producing these pieces. And it was excellent publicity because it had been going on for so long. And then they're like, look, now anybody who's in our park can get one. Now, their downside was that it was your face on Han Solo's body. So unless you look like Harrison Ford, if you're a 6-year-old girl on Harrison Ford's body, that looks a little weird.
Yeah.
And so it didn't float very well. Whereas I was actually sculpting the full person, and so I was able to, I think it lasted maybe 2 years before it went down, and I'm still creating custom carbonites for people 15 years later.
So you talked about, I know one of the big things that you do is you coach creative type people's up on how to run a business, because you said
Yep.
it's not sort of intuitive for a creative person.
Not so
Just
much.
like it wouldn't be intuitive for an accountant to be able to draw a landscape. Um,
Correct.
so how do you think about pricing? Could you maybe help me understand? Because I know if I created something, you have an emotional attachment to it at some capacity. Or I created this thing. I've always heard it's one of the rude things to do is try to haggle with an artist. It's like, oh, it's $200 for this. You're like, yeah, would you do it for 150? It's like that's kind of rude. But maybe
Yeah,
just talk
it
me
is.
through how you think about pricing and pricing to be profitable, and then also, maybe just the confidence factor. You've probably done it long enough that you're like, $200, man, it is what it is. That kind of
Mhm.
take it or leave it sort of thing. But I imagine a lot of artists don't have that confidence to be able to say, hey, it's $200, and that's what you need to pay to get it.
I don't know. I didn't look at the rules too closely. Can I
You
give
can
you one
certainly
swear word
curse.
here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So here's the best thing. This is the best advice I can give any creative that's out there. And I'm going to swear. Quit selling your shit.
Mm,
Sell yourself.
'kay.
Okay. And the reason that is because everything that you make, you can be bought on Amazon, Temu, Walmart for pennies on the dollar.
Mhm.
Okay. So as an artist, if you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into your work and you're trying to just sell it on the value of your work, it won't sell for what it's worth. The reason that is because, and you'll hear this every time you do a trade show or whatever, is, oh, my kid could make that for cheaper, or I can get that on Amazon for blah blah blah. And it's like, well, then go do it. So the idea is to quit selling the thing that you're making, start selling yourself as the person who's making it. And then this is the handcrafted nature of things. When artists and creatives really dig into that, their first off, their skin grows 3 inches thick. That's the easiest thing, that the most beneficial thing for them is they're like, no, I'm valuable. The best way to price things, though, is once they understand that, because when you go to or you're watching the Oscars or any of those award shows, they never ask a person who's walking down the aisle, what are you wearing? They're like, pants. They're like, who are you wearing?
Mhm.
And that's the best example I can give about not selling your stuff, but sell yourself.
'Kay.
But when we get into pricing, there are 3 areas of pricing that you have to have. There's material cost. It's indisputable. It costs me this much money to get the materials, period.
Mhm.
There's labor, which we'll get into in a second. There's profit. Okay. And then there is like your overhead.
Yep.
All right. A lot of artists don't have a ton of overhead. So, okay. Or they buy material, like I buy clay 5 pounds at a time. I'm rarely selling a 5 pound object. I'm usually selling something that's less for that. So, I got some overhead in that regard, but I always charge as though I'm buying a 5 pound block for every customer that I have.
Got
It's
it.
just normal.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
but labor is the one where we all get get hung up, especially creatives. Say, so the analogy that I use is your time is worth something. Everybody, that's the most valuable thing that we possess is a time.
Mhm.
And so if I'm going to put my time into something, it's got to be worth something. So when I'm talking to new artists, I say, okay, imagine a scale of 1 to 10. All right. 1 to 5 is basically the learning curve. You're learning a new task. Okay. Up until you hit level 5, you're not good enough to sell.
Mhm.
Okay. 5 is our entry level into selling in the world of whatever it is that I'm creating. 5, I say, so how do we figure out what you're worth? Well, at a level 5, if you're comfortable enough selling your work, then you should charge at least minimum wage per hour for that work. Because
Certainly.
if you're charging less than that, go get a job at McDonald's.
Right.
Okay. It's going to kill your soul, but at least you're making a living. So if you're just entering into it, there you go. So now you know your hourly rate, and your hours are your hours. Labor is your labor. And a lot of artists don't want to charge for labor. It's like, well, no, it's my passion. I'm just passionate about this. Like, well, sure, but let's say you took a job. So Alexander, you took a job and somebody's paying you $500 for it. You're like, I got $100 worth of materials. I want to earn a profit. So I've got like $70 worth of profit. There's $170, leaves me at $330. Okay, so now that's my labor. Okay, we'll say, for instance, $330. I can do this, not a problem. Excellent. I don't want to charge them that, so I'm just going to say it's we'll say $200, and maybe I got a little bit of profit in there. I'm not accounting for my labor. Well, then you hurt yourself. You can't do it. You got to hire somebody to do it. They're not going to do it for sunshine and rainbows. They're not going to do it for exposure. They want cold hard cash. And so if you have to pay them, where's that money coming from?
Mhm.
That's your labor. You have to charge labor, even if you are the labor. That's why it's so important. And so once they're like, oh, I get that. So now we put it into a spreadsheet and we say, all right, well, it's this many hours at this rate. And then these are the material costs. This is the profit. And this is my overhead. There's your hard line number. And if I've had hagglers, we get them all the time, so it's creative lifestyle. So they come in, I'd like to pay, oh, it's $200. Well, I'll pay you $150 for it. Okay, cool. Well, this is what it costs me to make it, and it's $200. And then you show them the math, and I've never had anybody go, math is wrong. They're always like, oh, okay. And either they can afford it or they can't.
Mhm.
If I get a belligerent person, occasionally I get like a Karen or whatever that comes in, they'll do that, and they're like, well, I got a kid who can pay for that. I'm like, that's cool. So what do you do for a living? And they usually say, well, I'm a full-time employee, or whatever. I'm salaried. I'm like, cool. Well, what if you worked 40 hours this week, but I told you I'm only going to pay you a third of that? Because that's literally what you just did to me. You said, my price is this. No, I want to pay you less than that. Okay, well, if I did that to you, you would freak out, right? If your paycheck, you got it, and you're like, I'm missing a third of my paycheck. And they're like, oh, we didn't feel like paying you that much that week because we valued you less that week than we did every other week, even though you're doing the exact same thing. That's what you're saying to me. And that usually makes them sputter stop.
Mhm.
They're like, okay, never mind. Now, getting back to the sliding scale of 5 to 10, what we say is, when you progress, when you get good, you get fast. Okay. You get better at your job.
Mhm.
So let's say at level 5 at minimum wage, it takes me 10 hours to do something. So let's say minimum wage in my area is $15 an hour. I wish. So we're making $150. Okay. Well, if I'm progressing faster and I can do it in half the time and I'm still only charging $15 an hour, well, now I'm making $75. Well, why is worse Paul making more money than better Paul?
Right.
Oh, we're not. We should be charging more. And that's how we escalate up. When you find yourself becoming so efficient in your job, or you buy a machine that helps you take care of 2/3 of the work, that is a cost. My machines are back here, which is why I point that way. But like that has to be accounted for. Well, those machines weren't free. Or if I hire another sculptor to work with me, that person's not free. And so my efficiency goes up, but my pricing stays the same. I'm losing money. So then I double my price. So now it might take me 5 hours. I'm still making $150. And you look at that scale. So every time we bump up a number, we're doubling our price. And I'd say a lot of the work that I do when I work for television or if I work for movies, I'm a 10 and I'm earning about $750 to $1,000 an hour. And sometimes it's hard to say, if I'm talking to a customer, like a one-on-one person, and I say, that's my hourly rate, they're like, there's no way I can afford you. But I'm working for the industry and the industry can afford that. But if I'm doing one-on-one work, I know my limitations and I know my skill set enough that I could be like, okay, what is your budget? What are we working with? What can I get done for what you can pay?
Mm.
And with art, there's always going to be a sliding scale. And I keep one myself for when I'm working one-on-one with somebody versus if I'm working with a company or if I'm mass producing or whatever. I always have some kind of scale that I can work in, but that number is firmly planted in math and understanding of my skill sets.
Mm,
And so once you understand that, and you can like literally look at it. If I'm selling my work and I'm just starting out, charge minimum wage. If I'm getting really good at it, start charging more. And your pricing should constantly increase. If your material costs go up, your price has to go up.
mhm.
Don't eat that cost in labor because, again, if you couldn't do the job, you had to pay for somebody else to do it. So it's all about math and being honest with yourself. But I also know a ton of creatives don't like to write that stuff down. They don't want to do the math.
Yeah.
They don't want to look at the hard spreadsheets or anything like that, which is why I created this business, because we have character sheets now, which we can then put it all onto paper and it feels more like a game. And it's like, oh, okay. But then those things correlate to real life.
Mm. Yeah, one thing that you're kind of hitting on, I see business owners do often where they'll, run a bakery or something like that, and they'll say, "Oh, I made $70,000 in profit this year." And it's like, "Well, great. How much did you pay yourself?" "Well, I paid myself the 70,000." So it's like, so you have a job where you make $70,000. Like, you
Correct.
didn't make any profit. Where you're
Correct.
saying, like, make sure you factor the profit. I think it's, make sure you factor the labor sort of thing. Like, you are the
Yeah.
labor, and
Mhm.
like when you were charging $50 for your figurines, it's like you're only getting paid for your labor, really, which is
I was barely making any labor. I was getting
yeah,
paid mostly for materials. That was what was crazy.
yeah.
I was making maybe $5, $10 on every piece that I made. And I was a little factory, but I was barely paying my bills.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until we bumped up that we started once I doubled my price and or quadrupled my price, that I actually started making an income and it was more profitable.
Hmm. What are the other things that you see creatives run into issues with running their business?
A lot of them don't understand contracts,
Okay.
NDAs, and taxes. Those are the three
Oh,
biggies.
taxes. Yeah. Well,
I love tax. Like I got audited when I got out of grad school. I had Pop Out Furniture. So I went from making $19,000 a year as a grad student to my first year out of it. I was making it was almost $300,000. Well, the IRS saw that and they went, "You're selling drugs, so so
mhm.
we need to audit you." And so I got audited.
Nice.
And I was living in LA at the time, and I didn't know anything about it. I'd been going to H&R Block like everyone else,
Oh,
doing my
oh,
taxes.
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm getting audited. I don't know what to do. So I literally opened up a phone book. For those kids who don't remember what phone books are, they're books that had all the numbers in it. And I just randomly chose a CPA, certified public accountant. I'm like, this guy. And so I called him up. I'm like, hey, I'm getting audited. I need some help. And I, I don't know, that heaven shone a light down on me. I don't know what the heck happened, but I got the right dude.
Mm,
Because this guy, I walk into his office and he's like, hey, I got a question for you. I've got two other clients. They're dentists. They're a married couple. They're each a dentist. They make about $6 million a year. How much do you think they pay in taxes? And I'm a smart guy. Don't get me wrong. I'm like 30%. He goes, the last year they paid $300. And I'm like, okay. He goes, would you like me to set up your taxes that way? And I said, heck no. I
yeah.
want you to teach me how. I want you to teach me it. And so we sat down and he walked me through the entire thing. And I went and got audited. And my goodness, I asked so many questions that they're like, can you quit asking questions? If you want to know all this, here's our training DVDs. And they handed me a stack of training DVDs and said, go learn it.
Wow.
I nerded out so much on taxes. I teach taxes in the independent contractor to anybody who will listen. And I charge so little for it because I want everybody to know this information. It uses, because the majority of our tax law is written for millionaires and billionaires to keep their millions and billions. It's not made to benefit people who don't make a ton of money. But those laws are still there. They're still available to anybody. And if you know what they are, you can take advantage of them. The problem is they make it so complicated and so deep that you need a team of lawyers, they're tax lawyers, to be able to understand it. Unless you know a super nerdy dude who loves to dig into this stuff and he can lay it out for you. And so that's what I do. That's one of the things that I teach. And it's actually in one of my books. But so taxes is one of those confusing things for a lot of people. But once you spell it out, they're like, oh, and I cannot stress this enough to your audience. Be your own tax preparer. You know your business better than anyone else will. Even if you don't prepare your taxes, know it enough so that when you go to talk to somebody, you're standing on equal footing, if not slightly above. You want the higher ground when it comes to taxes. Because in the end of it, if you get audited, and I've been audited 3 times, and every
Jeez.
single time I got more money back. They
Yep.
quit auditing.
It's always nice when it works out like that.
That's right, because I know my stuff. And so what I say is the worst that can happen is you can make a mistake and you'll have to pay for it. Okay. But if you don't lie, if you're honest, but you know your deductions is the biggest one, then you're not going to have that issue, but you're going to know it better than anybody else. Most CPAs are average CPAs. Not that they have average knowledge, but they having to deal with so many different kinds of jobs. They know the average deductions.
Yeah.
But we're all in these weird, like super specific jobs. And so what you can deduct versus what charge and earn is vastly different than what the average will know. So know that. But then the other things that they run into, so it was like taxes and then contracts and NDAs. And I've become an expert in these because I've been burned before and it hurt me. Like the worst one I ever got was I was fresh out of college and I had somebody ask me about designing for television commercials for this huge like regional supermarket campaign. And I was so excited. I did a ton of research on it. I went in and I met the guy and he's like, yeah, so my idea is to have this like drum major bear called Major Savings. And he's going to be our mascot. And we'll just put it on everything. Can you make that? And I'm like, honestly, I did some research and 85 to 90% of your shoppers are female. And I think, as much as a talking bear would entice me to come shop at your store, hearing it from another woman who is your main shopper to say, hey, I saved my family money, I think it'd be a better idea. I said, kind of like this drawing of my wife that I did, this cartoon version of my wife. And we're sitting there chatting and talking. And he's like, oh, that's great. All right. Shook hands. He's like, we'll be in touch. And they were never in touch. And then 2 months later, I opened up my mailbox and there's my wife's picture on the
Oh.
ad. And then it's a commercial on television. And so I sued the guy. I was like, hey, you stole my stuff, man, as we should.
Yep.
And I went in front of a judge and the judge goes, did you invent women? I said, no. He goes, all right, siding for the defendant here.
Jeez.
Not for you. And as I was walking out, the owner of that business walked up and said, next time, keep your damn mouth shut until you sign an NDA, and walked out of the room. That was one of the hardest lessons I ever learned. It's like, don't give away your idea. You can be brilliant, but don't tell them what that brilliance is until they've signed a waiver that says they won't steal it from you. And then with contracts, read them. If you don't understand them, go to Chat GPT and say, explain it like I'm 5.
Mm-hmm.
Read every bit of your contracts. We buzz through EULAs all the time. Like I've got an Apple phone. Like how many times do they update my damn phone? And I've got to go through here, scroll 55 pages and be like, all right, just accept. I don't care. But what we're accepting is everything that we're complaining about with Chat GPT and stealing all of our stuff is that we're giving that information away. And so read your contracts and understand what they say. And if you don't understand it, find a thing that can explain it to you, because that's usually how you get burned. When I was working with Disney for the first time, I was developing pop-out furniture, and they hired me to build the model and be the assistant designer for Bear in the Big Blue House, the live show. And so I was building all this stuff for them, but in their contract, it says that any ideas that you come up with while under contract are owned by Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Anything. Well, I was in the middle of designing this pop-out furniture, this brand new product. And so I said, no, I can't do this. I said, I can't sign this unless there's something that says you don't own pop-out furniture. And they're like, okay. So we went back and forth, my lawyer, their lawyer, and eventually we had an addendum that said, okay, except for this paper product thing that he's working on, because it had nothing to do with the thing that I was being hired for.
Mm-hmm.
But Tim Burton designed Nightmare Before Christmas while working on Fox and the Hound. And it took him until he had directed Beetlejuice and it was successful, and they wanted him to direct Batman. His negotiating tactic, I want the rights to Nightmare Before Christmas. He says, you give me back my IP and I'll direct Batman for you. And the rest is history. And it's so you've got it. And if I had just been like, I'm working for Disney, yay, sign away my life, I would have lost out on that $1 million business. They could have come back retroactively and said, oh, we noticed this thing came out right after you started working for us. That's ours. And they could have taken it from you. And so read your contracts and know your contracts.
What about marketing? What have you learned with all these things going viral?
Don't chase it. It's very, like, we all want to be viral. We all want our things to touch the lives of millions of people. I want to dispel a social media myth that because a lot of younger people these days are looking for that hit. I talk to a lot of people and they want to be influencers, they want to be YouTube stars, they want to be, gamers for a living. And we go onto social media and we see these numbers on the bottom of all these little, you know, uh, doom scrolly videos that we watch where they've got millions of likes and stuff. But the reality is, in business, you don't need a million people to be successful. Those likes rarely transfer to dollars. Rarely. And so what you want to do is you want to concentrate on the people who will actually buy your stuff. So the reality actually is, when you're starting out, and honestly, I still believe in this, and I'm 20 years down the road, you need 100 good fans,
Yeah.
100 people. And if you can convince those 100 people to constantly, consistently buy from you or tell other people to do it, you'll be infinitely more successful than trying to chase that social media dragon of being super, uh, you know, uh, viral on those things. Now, obviously, having a viral hit once in a while is great. I mean, it helps to boost the morale. It helps to bring some money into the pocketbook. But if it happens for me. I'm not trying to chase it. And I know there's people out there selling formulas for making it happen and blah, blah, blah. But those formulas do not generate sales. I'd rather spend my time and effort being a good artist and create good work instead of trying to chase a cool, clever little video that I put on there that doesn't translate into sales. So.
Mm. Yeah, that's tough. Obviously, you get that like kind of dopamine hit when things go viral, and that's what a lot of from what I hear from a lot of creators is it's hard not to kind of feed into that, like do more of what the audience wants. But it seems like you've been able to pivot out of that, and you're not just still making, you know, thousands of Wii figurines every week. You have other things that are exciting for you.
Well, I'd rather it be. I guess it's really what you're after. I'm not chasing the dollar. I'm chasing art. I'm trying to fulfill Santa's missive when I'm doing Paul Pape Design stuff, and that is to bring joy to people on a level that is unattainable from the mass-produced garbage that we have out here. Now, don't get me wrong, I collect the mass-produced garbage too, but I want those things that matter to really have significance. When I started getting into ring boxes, that was a niche that I was kind of thrust into it on accident. But what I realized over the years of doing it, and I have made thousands of different ring boxes, is that is a moment it's an intimate moment between two people. And religion, sex, all that stuff doesn't come into play. It is literally as a connection between two people, but a lot of that is an in the moment type of thing. And the only thing they have to remind themselves of it is their memory. I produce a tangible memory, a moment in time that I've been able to capture. And the whole point of it being personalized is that it is up until that point a culmination of your relationship. It's an inside joke, or it's the where you met. It's a representation of this randomness of two human lives coming together to form a bond. And so I would rather chase that reaction, because then when I put that image out on the internet, I'm on more lists of cool different ring boxes than you can even imagine. I mean, I think I've been on BuzzFeed like 50 times. It's like
Hmm.
my work, because it resonates. People are like, that is the most human connected ring box I've ever seen.
Hmm.
And I've had some really weird doozy of ideas come across, and I'm like, I don't know you, but I know enough to help to make this happen.
Yeah.
And so I would rather chase that than and be authentic to myself, because that in the end, I'm not trying to anticipate what people want. I'm trying to be authentic to myself, put something good out into the world, and see where it goes. As opposed to trying to chase this thing that people are going to laugh at, they'll give me an upvote on, but they won't do anything more than that. They just demand for me to dance more, and I'm not a dancing monkey.
Hmm. I'm sure you've had some kooky requests. You have a handful of requests that stick out to you. I mean, you already said that you have some odd ring boxes,
Oh yeah.
um, but
Uh,
you have specifically on your website just a
yep.
tab that is like original ideas and special requests, which is one
Yep.
of the craziest things that I've ever heard of, and I'm sure I can only imagine what comes in. So, do you have some favorites?
Um, I once did a okay, Kevin Smith. You know Kevin Smith, the
Kevin Smith.
movie director who did Clerks
Yeah,
and
yeah.
such.
Jay and Silent Bob. Yeah.
Correct.
Wow,
Yeah, he's Silent
he's
Bob.
also really skinny now, which is really
Yes,
strange. He definitely has got the Ozempic face going.
absolutely. Well, he lost that way before Ozempic came out, but so he was doing a podcast called Hollywood Babylon,
Okay.
And he's a huge Star Wars nerd, and he's talking to Ralph Garman, who is his co-host. And he's like, hey, Ralph's like, hey, your birthday's coming up here, and I found this guy who does custom carbonites. He'll freeze you in carbonite and you can buy it. And he's like, oh, where's this guy at? And he's like, oh, he's in Nebraska. He's in Nebraska. He's like, all right, that sounds cool, but I would only want it if it was me frozen in carbonite in a lightsaber dildo. And so that came straight across my desk. So I have so I made a Kevin Smith frozen in carbonite in a lightsaber dildo that lights up. So there's one crazy, crazy one. And you go to his Instagram, it's still there. Him holding up this beautiful lightsaber dildo.
Lightsaber dildo. I'm searching for it right now. Sure enough, here it is. Wow. All right. It's a piece of art, though.
It's a piece of art, and he still has it. I've done.
Well, you can't throw that away. I mean, that's, I don't know what you do with it, but you can't throw it away.
I don't ask what they do with it.
Yeah.
I know what it was made for.
Yeah, right.
So no, I've had some ring boxes that come across as being interesting. There's a lot of fandoms out there, and there's a style of ring box that I won't do anymore, but I will admit I did do it. I had a guy who was really into Joker. Him and his girl were really into Joker. And so he wanted me to make the bang gun, which is the gun that has the flag that comes out and says bang, but instead of saying bang, it says marry me. And I was like, oh, that would be interesting. And then he would pop it open in the chamber where the bullets would be the ring is at. And I thought, oh, that's really cute.
Pretty cool.
Except that his way of proposing was to shove the gun in her face.
Jeez.
And I'm like, domestic violence is not a great way to start your marriage, but
what do you say, girl? What do you say?
And so I was like, I made that one, but now I try to get people away from it.
Get them away from prop guns.
From violence.
Yeah, you don't want to hear about on the news, man with prop gun is shot down in the subway. You're like, ugh.
Well, speaking of the news, so that would be my other craziest one. So one of the ring box requests that I got was for a guy who's a huge James Bond fan.
Okay.
And he's like, I'm going to win my girl. I'm like, okay, cool. He's from Australia.
Oh, no.
And so his plan was he was going to go on a 7-country European tour and then end up on an international cruise ship. And on this cruise ship, he wanted to find and disarm a bomb. And so the bomb would actually be the ring box. And so he wanted an authentic looking bomb that was programmable, but then had a countdown timer on it, looked like something that would be a bomb. And he would go in and he'd have to disarm it. And when he disarmed it, an area would pop up and the ring would be inside of it. And then he would propose.
Cool idea. I see where the problem could come from though.
So I made this thing and I shipped it to Australia and I've never heard from the guy again. I did get a call from some agencies wanting to know, because I had not only built a bomb, but I put my business card glued to the inside of it. So it was like I signed that damn thing.
Right.
What I didn't realize at the time was that to open the ring compartment, it sent an electrical charge to a solenoid, which is a small electronic arm that opens up. And if you take out the solenoid and you put some explosive material in there, I literally created a bomb.
Oh.
And sometimes as an artist, the challenge blinds you to what you would actually, responsibility. And so, made that one. That's on my YouTube channel. So if you go to my YouTube channel and you search up the time bomb, you can actually still see it. It's still sitting there, and it is everything that you think it is. You open it up and it is curly cued red and green wires and the whole 9 yards. So it's all sitting in there.
James Bond themed bomb ring box.
Yeah, there it is. And I walked through the whole process of
wow, it's like it got an interface and everything. This is crazy. That's hilarious, man. So where do you think things go from here? I mean, you're helping business owners out. You've got this game. You've got these various ways of coaching up through all facets of business. You've obviously got these super customizable items. What would you like to see happen over the next couple of years with your business and what you're doing?
Well, the whole point now is to, I've lived this life. I love my job. I don't wake up regretting what I do ever. And so what I want to do is I want to put that power back into people's hands. And that's what I coach and consult on, as well as this Gamify Business. I want people to understand that business is not some insurmountable mountain. It is not Everest. If you can have a lemonade stand, you can be an entrepreneur. The problem is that a lot of people don't understand the rules or like the steps involved in becoming it. And so really that's what Gamify Business does, is it simplifies the process into a format that we're all familiar with. We all game. Even if you say I've never gamed before, we've all played Legend of Zelda, or we've played Tetris, or we've done something where we've gone from level 0 to level 10 or above. And if you can do that, then you understand, one, the dopamine kick that you get for leveling up. Everybody loves that. And it's the same thing in business. I've got 3 boys. They are completionist gamists. They will play a game 100 percenters. That's what they do. That's their thing. And I know a lot of other gamers who are that way. And if people would put in 30%, 40% of the effort they put into 100%ing a game into their own business, they'll be super successful. But they always like, I don't know what to do next. It's like, why isn't my marketing working? Or how do I write a letter to the bank? I don't know. So they're Googling it or whatever, and they're getting generic answers back. These books break it down. Here's the steps. And it's not difficult steps. It's simplified approach to owning and running a business while keeping it fun. Because if I went to my work every day and hated it, I would not be doing that. That's why I got out of all those other jobs, is because I didn't like what I was doing. And so ideally in 3 to 5 years, I mean, I'd like to just basically go and teach the system to as many people as I can. If possible, franchise it out. That's what the second book is for. So we got the game. This is the Game Master's Guide, which teaches people how to teach this program.
Mm-hmm.
And we use this one for teachers in schools and such who aren't used to teaching in an RPG envelope. And then ideally just go out there. I still work for television. I still work for people occasionally, but I'm getting older. I'm 50 years old. I don't want to be doing this for the next another 20 years. I don't want to be 7 years old making custom carbonites. It's not my jam. So I would like to go out there and kind of share the wisdom, share the experience that I have, and explain to people why it is so simple. When I did my TED talk, originally I went out there and I was talking, my original speech was about creativity and how we should embrace creativity and all that. And when I got to my TED group, they said, no, we don't want you to talk about that at all. We want to know about Paul. We want you to do a TED talk about Santa for nerds, because we think that there's more value in you talking about you and how you've lived your life and how you've given your message out there than anything about creativity. Anybody can give a talk on creativity. And it's 100% true. It's like, I live a weird life. I've mowed my own path for as long as I can remember, but I've loved every bit of it, even through the hard times. And if other people could embrace that as a side hustle or as their main income, I think it'd be great. There's a statistic that says that 95% of people who get a degree in the arts, in any kind of creative field, do not pursue that creative field when they're done. And it's not because they don't have the skills. We're all given the skills. That's what you go to school for. They're not given the information to do something with it. And it's just feels difficult. But if I went into your school in your last year, you're about to walk out, you've got this huge backpack full of skills, and I walk in and I hand you one book and I said, go through the first 3 chapters of this book. And if you don't want to continue doing it, I'd be surprised, one, but even the first 3 chapters, if you can complete those, you will have a roadmap to selling your skill. And again, quit selling your shit, sell yourself. And so that's really what we need to put in there. And so that's what I do now. I go to the colleges, I go to high schools, and I say, you don't need to be an MBA to own a business. There's a lot of people out there who own lawn cutting businesses or whatever. They didn't go to school, get an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
They were mowing lawns in high school, and they're like, I can scale up, and they just kind of fall into it. I mean, you don't need to be schooled in this. You don't need the degree unless the job that you're going after specifically requires it.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's kind of the goal.
I think that's a worthy goal, man. And that's, partially what I'm doing too. I'm trying to teach entrepreneurs, just maybe not, as specifically creatives, but I think you are onto a niche that is definitely in need of help, is those creative folks. And, we talk about AI. Everyone says, well, when AI just does everything, what will people do? It's like, we'll just be creative. So, I think there is a yearning for that, for people to be able to have the time to be creative. And this is one of my outlets, and looks like you got a lot of outlets, man. So
never stopping.
Where can people find the book? Where can people find some of your designs? Where can people, maybe get something customized from you, and or one of your kind of, I don't think you do anything off the shelf, but more off the shelf than others.
So my off the shelf stuff and my creative art is at Paul Pape Designs. That's Pape like paper without the R.
Yep.
PaulPapeDesigns.com. Honestly, if you just type in Paul Pape Designs on anywhere, you're going to find me.
Yep.
I've been doing it long enough.
Yep.
The book is Gamify Business, and you can find that at gamifybusiness.com. And you can have me come in and teach it to you. I do small groups, online groups. I do workshops. I do trade shows. If you want me to come in and work with your team, I mean, I've had success stories where I've taken teams that, were grossing million plus, but they were netting $50,000, and I've
Mm.
turned that around because they just don't, creatives, they're given a lot of money. They don't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
so they're wasting it. So if you want to really learn and hone in on your skill sets, gamifybusiness.com.
And all your social medias, you do a little bit of everything. I see your YouTube here,
Nope.
your Instagram. I see you're doing TikTok, man. You're across all of them. Do you have one in particular that you'd recommend people follow if they want to check out your stuff?
YouTube. If you go to YouTube, it's youtube.com/Paul Pape Designs, because it's just kind of the envelope that we're under. I've had it for 20 years. But I'm actually doing a Gamify Business segment now on there. It's called Gamify Business Tavern Talks, where I actually talk about the systems here in place. We talk about what kind of business you want to run, what are the 3 metrics that you need to have right off the bat, what skill set do you fall into, so on and so forth. So if you want to find out the overarching message of Paul Pape, go to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm sure you've thought of this, but most of your videos are like, 60 to 90 seconds. Have you ever thought about like a deep dive? Like, okay, someone requested me to make this, this gun, this, ring box gun. All right, I'm going to take you through my whole process. Is that something that you would ever
I've done
do?
a couple of those, the behind the scenes of them, and you know, short attention span theater.
Yeah, I know. But I do think
they're
that I
out
think
there.
it's coming back that people want to like kind of I don't want to say like cathartic, but like I just watch this guy and he builds like these crazy ring boxes. And if you told me that, I'd be like, I don't know why you're watching that. But then, when I see some of your stuff, I'm like, I get it. I think people would be really into that. So,
And I think when I was in the heyday of Paul Pape Designs, I mean, even like 2 years ago, I was making so many different things on the daily that there was no way to film anything. Just I'm not that
yeah.
organized.
And-
And so now it's, fortunately things are slowing down, and the jobs that I get are usually more monumental,
yeah.
or more dedicated, and so I can spend some really good time on it. Like I recently designed this piece from the 1992 movie Death Becomes Her. I don't know if you remember that one.
That one's no.
Yeah, so that's Bruce Willis, Meryl Streep, and Goldie Hawn. Okay,
Okay.
so there's a Isabella Rossellini is an immortal in it, and she sells this product called the Potion of Immortality, or Elixir of Immortality, and it comes in a very, very specific vial and like egg and this whole 9 yards. And so I had some guy wanted it as a ring box. I started making it, and I started building it more and more. And so I'm like building these like super high end master prop level versions of these things. So I mean, that's one of the pieces that I make, and it's actually now on Broadway. The show is
Huh.
they turned it into a Broadway show, but the design is actually my design. You can find me in the program. At the back there's a little special thanks to Paul Pape Designs, and that's because I've spent so many years. And what's funny is the company that made the movie, which is Paramount, actually ended up hiring me for my designs because they lost the designs in all the years since the movie was made, and they didn't want to spend the time to backwards engineer it,
Uh,
whereas they found a guy in Nebraska who'd already stolen the IP
yeah.
and was making the pieces, and so they paid me for the design.
That's hilarious. Paul, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you. This was fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. Looking forward to seeing this thing come out. It'll be a fun
We
listen.
got you, man.